And we're live.
Sorry, I was just messing with my hair again. Sorry.
Hi, everyone.
And on this week's show, we have the amazing Janet Murray, who is renowned for checking out hotel kettles, playing with her hair on online things, and is also your LinkedIn profile says you are a content and launch strategist.
Yeah,
So,
fancy.
yeah. So, who is Janet Murray? Like, let's find out. Like, if you had to pitch yourself to an elevator, because apparently people have to pitch themselves to elevators, hence the elevator pitch. Who is Janet Murray, and how did you end up as a content and launch strategist?
Well, like in all good tales, it was a bit of an accident. So
Yeah.
I started off as a teacher. I was an English teacher, and then I was a journalist for many years. And I sort of fell into what I was doing now, as many people do. So I was, contrary to popular belief, journalists don't earn that much money. So I was writing mainly for The Guardian and being paid by the word. And I used to get approached by people who would ask me, say, could you come in and train our team on how to do press coverage or teach us about content or whatever? And it was really nicely well paid. And I thought, how can I get more of this really well paid work? So I started to look into it. I thought I'll start a blog because then people will find me online. And then I realized I needed to learn about things like SEO and then social media marketing. And then I started a podcast. And then before I knew it, I'd learned all this stuff and was like, oh, this stuff works, this content marketing thing. Like maybe I'll drop the journalism and maybe I'll start teaching online. Because I think I was very much coming in at the kind of height of the bubble when everybody was like, make millions online and by just lying on a beach all day or whatever. So I kind of fell into it, and I started off, and Tim will remember this, but I started off teaching not what I wanted to teach at all. I was teaching people how to get press coverage, which was not what I wanted to teach. As a journalist, journalists never want to do PR. It's just not what they want to do. But people really wanted to pay me to do it, so I started off with that. I started a membership. I started selling online, digital products. Started speaking about it, and then gradually I pivoted my business. I created a planner by accident. I created a content planner, which I knew Tim was just about to grab that. I've got a different cover here. I just thought, oh, wouldn't it be good if you had this like content planner that could help you plan out your content for the year? So I thought I'll have a go at that, and then just launched. And this is, I think it's about 6 or 7 years, and it's really improved. I have got the first one knocking around, so it's really improved. So everything was by accident, really. And then I started to realize that this whole content thing, the planner came from this people, I don't know what to post, I don't know when to post, like if people would just tell me what to post when. And so gradually everything's really pivoted, and I've had so many light bulb moments along the way. But my latest thing is content kits. So I've started creating these fill in the gaps templates for like every type of content in your business. Started with social media, just done a lead magnet kit. I've got kits coming out on all manner of different types of content. I did a business basics one, which was just about like, how to, what kind of emails and content you need to get one-to-one clients and that kind of thing. So it's just been one sort of pivot after another. And I just like have ideas all the time and go, I think I'll do that. And I run events as well. So I run a big content planning event, which I have done for many years now, and it's happening again in person, online, in person and online for the first time in a few years in November. So is that it?
Well, you've got all your charity stuff and your running and your hotel kettles and all the rest of it. But I guess that's kind of the bare bones of it, so to speak.
Yeah, that's the professional stuff. Yeah.
I have so many questions and I don't know where to begin because you touched on probably 5 different subjects, and I want to ask about your charity work that you do. But let me ask you, for those who aren't aware, you explained a little bit, but will you describe briefly what exactly is a content and launch strategist and why is this important?
It's a really good question. It's a fancy title. So I used to call myself a content marketing expert. But actually, I felt like I was doing myself a bit of a disservice because I guess one of the things that I'm good at, there's lots of things I'm not good at, but one of them is being very strategic. And I'm like famously last minute, and as a journalist, I do everything on the last minute, like ink has to be drying to get it done. But I'm very good at seeing the big picture. So I realized that the things that I sell one to many, so I sell in volume. So we sold like 750 of these in a week. I sell these content kits. I don't do the big coaching programs or the big, I very much sell lots and lots of units. And to do that requires strategy, like launching requires strategy. And funnily enough, I've got a group going through doing a beta course with me at the moment on launching a small online course. And they're just blown away by the fact that, like, what do you mean? Like, you have to create content in the 3 or 4 weeks, or even the 3 or 4 months before you like in order to have a successful launch. Like, what do you mean that you created a lead magnet and put it out like 90 days before your planner went on sale? Here it comes again. Planner went on sale. But I think that's what really makes the difference, and particularly on the online space, being able to think, okay, well, if I'm going to launch this, on September the 1st or whatever, I need to be doing this in June or May or April. And that's what makes the difference. I think that's why I'm still around. I think it's why I've made selling one-to-many digital products work. I think a lot of people try it and then they give up. But I think it's because you have to be strategic, and you can't just kind of like rock up and go, oh, I've created this online course and sell it, which a lot of people think you do, because unfortunately the online space is full of people peddling that myth. But it requires time, it requires planning. And so that's what I mean by strategist. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes. So you teach people how to launch classes, but would this work also for launching a book or product?
Yeah, anything. And for me, it's launch content is the thing that I specialize in, because for me, it's all about the content. So you can have all the strategy, but if you don't actually create the content, or you don't create the right kind of content. So for example, I've just launched a content kit for email lead magnets. A lot of people get really frustrated because they create an email lead magnet and they're like, well, why am I not a millionaire? Like, I created my email lead magnet. Why have only 5 people downloaded it? But again, it's about the strategy. If you want to create a successful lead magnet that helps you make loads of sales, like, so for example, I didn't do this deliberately, but I created a very specific lead magnet, which I put out in about June last year, because I knew this was going on sale pre-order in August. But a really good lead magnet, the content has to be bang on, and you have to start, right, okay, what do I want to sell? What can I create and put out there and get people to sign up to? That is just so bang on, so spot on. What email should I send in between, or what content should I create in between, because not everyone's going to be ready to buy. So it's all about creating the right content at the right time. You can have the right strategy, but if your content's rubbish, your lead magnet's rubbish. So for me, it's just about getting the content right, but doing things in the right order. It's a lot, actually, and I think it's a lot more than a lot of people think is involved, I think.
Yeah. So how much, I'm going to play, well, I don't know, devil's advocate is the right word here, but some people might say, well, you're Janet Murray, you've got all these followers on Twitter, you've got this big podcast that you're still doing the podcast, aren't you? That's like,
I stopped it and I've got a new one now.
You got a new one. But they say you've already got this existing audience, so you're already going to be able, if you create a lead magnet and all the rest of it, you're going to be able to get people to sign up to it. Have you worked with people who've basically starting from nothing, and what do you say to them if they're like somebody just totally new to the online world, but they might have a really good idea for a product?
You're probably not going to sell more than a few to start with.
I
didn't. My first online course, I sold 13. And when I looked at the time, I was devastated, because I was listening to all these people saying, I was following like all those, Jeff Walker's product launch or whatever. I think, why hasn't that happened to me? I didn't click the fact that they had all this audience.
I know, yeah.
And then it clicked. But the average conversion rate for online sales is 1 to 2%. So once I looked at my 13 was quite good, because the number of people had a email list. So although it's really hard, because people don't want to believe it, and people want to believe that, pay me 2,000 quid and I'll teach you how to, launch an online course. And I've seen so many people who launched it that sell nothing. So what I say to newbies is, like, unfortunately, I feel like I'm not the party pooper of online business, because I'm like, it's going to take you time. and you're probably going to need to have a podcast or a blog, or you're going to need to build authority, because, you know, people will pay more to someone for that same information, because they've, you know, they will pay me more because I've been around longer, and because I've showed up and done a podcast for years and years and years, I've done two, and because I have been on social media for years, than someone whose content might be just as good, but they haven't put in the time. So I think that's the thing, and it's really unfortunate, but it just takes time, and you have to build slowly, and you have to be consistent. You just have to show up and get on with it. You know, it's yeah.
Okay, my question about The Guardian, because I'm very curious about anyone who's a journalist and writing, and I just love that. What kind of writing did you do for The Guardian, and how did that help you with what you do now?
Well, I specialise in, not by choice, but I specialise in education and politics. Again, it was a kind of because I fell into it, but I learned some really valuable lessons. And that's another thing. I don't take that for granted. I know that being a writer for a living, that it's not something that, I know it gives me a privilege and an advantage, because being able to express yourself, you know, although email marketing and Facebook ads, it's all different, but it's still writing. So I specialise in that. What did I learn? Well, the most important lesson that I learned was about creating the right content for the right type of audience. So, you know, you could write the same story for The Guardian, the same events that have happened, but The Guardian would report that differently and maybe give more space to it or less space than another paper like The Sun or The Mirror or the Daily Mail or whatever. So it's learning about your readers, your audience, and giving them, you know, I was an editor as well, so I used to have to commission people to write things, and it's just about really knowing your audience and what they need from you, and giving them what they need. And I used to get pitched by PR people all the time with really dreadful pitches. It's like podcast pitches, like really dreadful. But people who hadn't read it, they hadn't taken the time to understand what it was about. You know, I would have picked up the phone and talked to people on the phone and explained it if they bothered to ring me. But it really is just content is just so much about understanding your audience and giving them what they need, not what you think they need. The other thing, and it drives me, I've been moaning about this a lot, Tim, but and it might be partly kind of a neurotypical thing as well, neurodivergent thing, but I'm really a bit obsessive about facts and opinion about facts, right? So a lot of people are really mean about journalists, and they say, oh, they just make stuff up and stuff, which is just not true, because, you know, you can get in a lot of trouble if you make stuff up. So whenever I was reporting a story, it's a difference between me reporting a story than me writing an opinion article. You know, that's okay. If you're writing an opinion article, that is your opinion on something. But typically I was reporting other things that happen. So first of all, you have to check that it's actually correct. You can't just go around, you know, like reporting things. So you have to verify, you have to check your sources, you have to make sure that they you know, that you get a hell of a lot of trouble if you're reporting things that you haven't checked out, but also balance. So you have to make sure, you know, if you're reporting something that could be potentially negative about somebody, you go and give them the chance to have right to reply. You make sure that you have a balanced view and voice. There's a lot about inclusion as well, and being inclusive in your content. So they were really, really valuable lessons. And I find that I've been whinging about this a lot recently, but like for me, it's like I find in the online space, like people would just make these like massive, you know, sweeping statements, like you did this or you said that, or that person said, well, no, actually, where's the evidence? Like, you know, we need evidence. You can't go around saying this happened. You need screenshots, you need proof, you need recording, you need whatever. And so it has given me a real sense of, I've got like a real strong sense of justice and fairness anyway, but it's given me a real sense of making sure that everything I report is accurate, everything I put out is as accurate and factual as it possibly can be. Obviously, everyone makes mistakes, don't they? You know, we're only human, but the intention there is always to be factual and accurate, as well as obviously entertaining. And also the other thing I learned as well, sorry, I've got a cat trying to get through the window, was about not using fancy words. So always reaching for the more simple. And I used to work for The Guardian. I used to have to edit these awful people who would argue with me, and they'd go, oh, but it's The Guardian people. And I was like, well, the people who read The Guardian still catch the train to work. You know, they still are trying to read the paper while they're drinking their coffee in the morning or whatever. So it's not about using language, always reaching for the most simple word phrase, not using jargon, being quite conversational in your tone. So basically the opposite of everything that you were taught in English lessons, basically. So they were my main takeaways.
Right, before we forget about the most important topic.
Can I let my cat in? Is that okay?
Yes, yes.
I'm going to get one of my cats. He's going to make a right nuuisance of himself. This is Tiggy. I don't know if you might just see his tail.
Let's see if he walks by. Yeah.
He's gone now. You just might have seen his tail.
Right. Let me share. Oh, what's it gone to that screen? Let me go and share a Instagram account that you have.
Or is this my kettle account?
Your kettle, yeah.
I haven't posted on it for ages, but that's lockdown's fault. It's not mine.
Right. So let's explain to the world. It's something you become. I mean, I know it's a jokey thing, really, but what was the attraction to you about highlighting the array of kettles and, well, let's say coffee equipment? I don't know what they would call it in the US, because they don't really have kettles in the US because of their.
No, yeah, that's right. I didn't know what it was at first, and now after seeing the pictures, I get it. Okay.
Yeah. So in the US, they just don't get this thing about kettles, do they? And
Well, anyway, that's enough. I think people get the idea that it's the arrangement of in-room cult. What would you call it?
Tea trays.
Yeah. So manufacturing equipment, whatever.
Okay. Yeah. So prior to lockdown, I used to travel a lot with work and speak, and so the first thing I always look at in a hotel room is what's sort of tea tray. Has it got a kettle? Has it got one of these fancy coffee makers? Has it got biscuits? And I think in the UK sometimes you can get some quite funny 1970s looking ones, can't you? And I just started photographing them. And actually that Instagram account, I think it's only got 3 posts on it because I couldn't travel anymore. I think I need to put some more content up, but I put them on my personal Facebook now. But now people send them to me, so they check into a hotel room and they send me pictures.
I know.
I don't really know. I mean, I just like tea, and I don't like being. I can't think of, I mean, obviously there's a lot of worse things in life, but I can't think of many worse things than being away from home and not having tea bags and nice tea. And in the US, when they say just make it in the back of the coffee maker, and we're like, are you joking? I thought I might have brought my own tea bags, but fresh milk, I just like a nice cup. I like coffee as well, but just like a cup of tea. I mean, I don't know. I thought everybody went into a hotel room and looked at. You do now, Tim, don't you? Because
well, I mean, ironically, I'm one of these people. I go to lots of hotels but I never use any of the facilities of hotels. Generally, I never use the pool. I never use the spa. I never use the thing. So actually, the in-room things are actually quite important in a way. And in the US, it's some of the coffee machines, and some of them have no instructions whatsoever, and they assume that you have to press this thing down and then this thing. And then sometimes I've had to Google the coffee machine to work out how to use it. It's interesting in general, kind of, because it is somewhere that hotels can excel quite easily what they give you in the hotel room. And some of them don't
stand apart. Like fresh milk, if I go in and there's fresh milk, I'm just because otherwise I buy my own. I always take my own supply of biscuits as well.
We usually have coffee makers, but after traveling the UK now, I noticed that your kettles, if that's what you're calling them, it includes biscuits too, or what you call biscuits. A lot of times now I'm watching for the biscuits. I want to go with my tea.
And sometimes you get really good ones, and sometimes you get bad. I had one that the biscuit packet was open. That was the whole.
Oh no,
that was the whole thing. But I don't know what it is but I feel like I'm like a tea tray influencer because people now send me pictures, don't they?
I have pictures to send you, Janet.
It's a niche, isn't it? It's a niche.
It's a niche,
you are probably the number one hotel kettle.
I think I am the number one. I think I shouldn't have called it hotel kettles, because it really is like tea trays. Did I call it hotel kettles? It should be tea trays.
What's it called? Hotel kettles. Yeah. It's got 69 followers, so it's actually
it grew very quickly.
Well, I mean, if you think so, if you were doing that fresh, 69 followers, so the conversion rate's like 1 or 2%. So if you had a product for that,
I could have my own brand, Courageous Tea, couldn't I? Because I've got like Courageous Content Planner, Courageous Content Live, Courageous Tea. Like, that's a really good idea.
I feel like people would go to hotels based on this, to be honest.
Courageous hotels, couldn't I? We had to do
you could have a little like rating for every hotel on there, what they give you in the coffee.
Well, I like reading. I think Christelle might not know what I'm talking about here, but I don't know what you call them, but motorway service stations. So if I'm on the motorway, I like reading the write-ups of the motorway service.
Oh yeah.
I don't know, what do you call them in the US? Like,
I don't know. Well, I mean, what
gas stations on the
like where you stop.
Okay. Oh, like rest stops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like a rest stop. I think we might call it a rest stop. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think the US never used to have the equivalent concept, but I think you have now, because they say gas stations in the US they started acquiring all these retail arms and things, so they're becoming much more like our service stations.
Yeah,
I
feel like service stations are quite a British thing, aren't they? And then like
they're very much a British
chef, and they're really horrible. But now you get like McDonald's and KFC and Marks and Spencer and Subway, and like you can get everything now. But there is, I think it's a bit like hotel kettles. There's a bit of a. I can tell you which ones are my favourite ones.
No, save that for the paid content. You don't want to give that stuff away.
Don't share yet, Janet. Before we have a few minutes, and I wanted to get to asking you about your charity work, because I've noticed, I think on your LinkedIn, that you've raised money for at least 2 different charities. Will you tell us about that? Who it is, why, who, what, when, where, why, and how? All
Yeah, so I've run, I think about 4 London marathons now, and I'm actually running the Great North Run, which is up in Newcastle in September, to raise money for various charities. And I've run for various ones. So I've done the Miscarriage Association a few times. I've done the Ectopic Pregnancy Trust, and I've done, I can't remember now, maybe a premature baby charity, which might give you a hint as to the reasons why. So I've got one daughter. I've got a 16-year-old daughter, but I haven't had so much luck in that department. So I've raised money to really kind of raise awareness of miscarriage, of ectopic pregnancy. I think I've done the premature baby charity as well, I think. I'm doing bowel cancer UK. So unfortunately, my cousin died of bowel cancer, same sort of age as me, in her late 40s last year. And so I'm running the Great North Run. But it's the first one I've done since lockdown. That's only a half marathon. And yeah, I mean, it seems a really good way to, like fundraising. People always say, oh, is it really difficult? But actually, I usually organise competitions and stuff with my clients. I've got quite a decent sized email list, so I just email people and do competitions. And if people, make a donation, then they can get entered into a draw or something. So it's normally not too arduous to raise the cash. And yeah, it also gets me out and gets me keeping fit and stuff. But I haven't done anything since pre-lockdown. So I've got my first one coming up in September.
Okay, and that one's for which charity is that for?
That's for Bowel Cancer UK one.
Okay.
Before we finish up, because we started a bit late, so I've got a bonus question. But you were diagnosed with it. Was it ADHD or ADD recently?
Yeah,
talk a little bit about how that process, because it's becoming more and more usual for people who are older now to be diagnosed with these things, and it's just interesting to me. How did you first end up on getting that diagnosis?
I think it's quite typical with women. That, I mean, everyone's different. So I was diagnosed with ADHD a few years ago now, I think, and I've also recently had a level 1 autism, what would have been called Asperger's before, I guess.
Yeah.
Asperger's. And I think with women, there's lots of different presentations. This wasn't exactly the case for me, but often it's women who have mental health issues and they keep going back and they get diagnosed with all different things, and it's because they've got got a neurodiversity. It wasn't the case for me, but it's just hard to explain. I think with the ADHD, one of the leading experts on it, what's his name again, Ned Hallowell.
Yeah.
He's like basically most entrepreneurs have got it. And I guess if you think about it, that people who sort of buck the kind of 9 to 5, who are quite creative people, who are always coming up with new ideas and launching things and whatever. So for me, I've just always felt very unsettled. I'm not hyperactive physically particularly, but I'm very hyperactive mentally and always have been, and have just struggled. And there was nothing really that could explain. I mean, I've done a whole podcast on it. There's nothing really that could explain the feelings and the experiences that I was having. And it's very common in women, I think, where women mask. So women will kind of much better at kind of reading the situation and reading the room. And the most recent one, which I haven't really talked about much because I hadn't said it to my mum and dad, and I didn't really want to talk about it, was sort of level 1 autism. I think it's very true level 1, because women are very good at just learning to fit in, because it becomes very clear when you're a young girl if you don't fit in. For me, the things that stood out for me is that I'm very, very direct, and which Tim will probably know, he's known me for a while. And I've now learned to say to people, I'm really, really direct, like just and there was a particular incident, something that happened to me last year, where, and when I was an editor, actually, I used to give people feedback, and I'd be like, for me, everything's very contextual. So you're a writer, you're getting paid, I'm a writer, I get feedback. It wouldn't occur to me to argue with it or to get upset about it, because I would just see that as, I'm a writer, I'm getting feedback, I will make the changes. But my experience was that consistently that other people didn't respond in the same way, and people would get quite upset because I was just like, but it's wrong, you need to change it and stuff. And so I had this very direct communication style, and I think sometimes people think that I'm miserable when I'm not, or people think I'm annoyed with them or I'm not, or I'm not always brilliant at reading other people, and I might misinterpret the way that somebody, somebody's facial expression, or the way somebody interacts with me. With autism, people often have like sensory things as well. There's a few things for me, but I think the reason, to come back to Tim's question, is that a lot more women, I think, are being diagnosed with things again. Is this masking? So a lot of women, I found being a journalist really easy because it's a role. So I don't like. This sounds ironic for somebody who runs events, but I really hate big gatherings. I really hate. There's lots of people. I'd much prefer to be one-to-one or in a small group. So, but if someone says get on stage and speak to hundreds of people, no problem with that at all, because you're like playing a part, you're playing a role, and I think a lot of women learn to act in the way that's appropriate to the situation, and read the, they get good at masking. So it's quite difficult to explain in a sort of 5 minutes, but does any of that make sense?
Oh yeah, no, a lot of that does.
Yeah,
but it makes no sense to me. No, I'm kidding. I'm ADHD as well, so
right.
I had a late diagnosis as well. But you mentioned Ned Hallowell, and he's one of the leading experts that I first came across probably 10 years ago, and knows what he's talking about. And I think, if I remember correctly, he's ADHD. Is that correct?
He is, yeah.
And so he teaches on it quite well, and has all the information. And he's actually the person I always, people are like, I think I'm ADHD, I need to get a diagnosis. He's the one I send them to, just because he's so brilliant.
Yeah. And how did it come up for you, Crystal? What did you?
Okay, so I don't mask as well. And so there's no masking. And so I actually originally I had a friend whose wife started a whole online presence, and she wrote a couple books about it. And he said, oh, you should join my wife's group, you'd fit in. And I was like, why? And then a friend of mine who is a teacher said, oh, Christelle, you have ADHD. So I finally went in. I was getting diagnosed with anxiety, but which is kind of what you touched on. And actually, I should have been diagnosed with ADHD since 3. I mean, I've had it my whole life. I was the kid with the head in the cloud. My head in the clouds, doesn't focus. Like if you look back at my report cards, doesn't focus, head in the clouds, all the ADD stereotypes. So I was 35 when I finally got diagnosed. And I'm
45, I think. Yeah, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I found an amazing neurodiverse community to be part of now. And like you said, it's becoming more common. So
yeah, and I think people are sort of this oh well, maybe it's, even I think so, is it fashionable? And you know, is it fashionable? Is it 'cause everyone's, but I think, and I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and I was like, well, or is it just because birds of a feather flock together? So like the people that I tend to get on well with are other entrepreneurs, creative type people. So you naturally means that you're going to be similar in type, aren't you? And although I think there was, for me, there was like a sort of there's a part of me that's really rigid and part of me that's really what's the word? I don't know, but really like rigid and really like not ADHD. And so this recent latest diagnosis, so it's like you know, you've got two parts fighting. You've got that impulsive side, and then you've got this really rigid, like particularly I mentioned earlier about rules and fact, you know, people being factual and like and justice and fairness, and like I literally cannot abide by people not telling the truth. And I'm realizing as I get older that actually, I said this to someone the other day, that when somebody asks you to be honest, they don't mean it. Like they don't want you to be, oh, right, okay, now I know. And I you know, if someone said to me, does my dress not look nice, I would think about that and I go, well, they're here now, they can't do anything about it, like their dress looks awful, but you know, there's no point in me saying that, so I might as well say, no, it looks really nice. If someone says to me, could you give your opinion on my sales page, and they're asking me, I'm just going to tell them. It's very contextual, but I realize that, you know, that there's a whole network of social cues and things. But yeah.
So on the thing of social cues, can you start telling us how people can find out more, how they can get hold of your amazing products, courses, all the rest of it, and it's like I'm not good at I'm never good at ending these shows.
I was trying to read your I was looking at you going, is Tim making winding up movements?
Oh, I thought you were trying to read my t-shirt there. It's like 1975 anniversary for the D-Day landing.
I'm reading your social cues. Is it time to wrap up, Tim?
Yeah. I was looking at your body language to see whether it was Tim making shifty.
My actual body language is like, well, I would like the interview to go on longer, but I know the trouble is they can get a bit out of hand if we have the long. We had one that went on for about 50 minutes with this guy who was about retiring in Mexico, but that's just way too long. So we're probably at the winding up stage time-wise now. So.
You know, for me, you have to go. Anyway, well, so 2 places, my website, janetmarie.co.uk. I have a podcast, the Courageous Concept Podcast. That's where people often find me first, and Instagram at janmarie.uk. That's 3 calls to action, which is probably not right. I should have just given one. But yeah, Janet Marie, I'm easy to find if you Google me. So, cool. Thank you for having me as well. I'm sorry for being a bit late.
It was so nice to meet you and to hear all about your charity work and what you do, and I'm absolutely fascinated. And I welcome happily neurodiverse friends into our community.
Oh, good. Well, thank you. And I didn't get to talk about my hair, but you know that could be for a whole other.
But I mean, you know, it's okay. We all have hair problems around here.
Yeah, still growing out the side of my head. Yeah, I'm in that in-between stage. But anyway, thank you. Thanks for having me anyway. And,
thanks everybody for watching. And I'm going to press the outro now.
Bye-bye. We'll see you next week.
See you later. Thanks a lot.
See you everybody.
This is terrifying for me.
I've made more money in the last 3 years than I did in the previous 7.
Just cliche shit, you know.